The frozen crown. Rain didn't fall on Riverside Point. It attacked. Every drop felt like a tiny bullet against the cracked pavement, determined to erase this forgotten corner of America from existence. It was the kind of miserable Tuesday afternoon that made people question their life choices, where even the clouds looked apologetic for existing. For Ezra Frost, the Wolf King of the Northern Territories, it was just another goddamn Tuesday. The armored Escalade idled at the curb of what locals optimistically called Town Square, a depressing collection of boarded-up storefronts and a rusted fountain that hadn't worked since the Clinton administration. Ezra sat in the back seat, his jaw tight as he scrolled through financial reports on his tablet. Every number screamed failure. This subsidiary pack was bleeding money faster than a stuck pig. "We should have sent an accountant," Ezra muttered, his voice carrying the gravelly edge of a man who'd forgotten how to sleep. "This is beneath us, Marcus." His beta, Marcus Chen, gripped the steering wheel and shot a glance in the rearview mirror. "With respect, Alpha, you said you wanted to see the rot firsthand. You said." "I know what I said." Ezra cut him off, his silver-gray eyes never leaving the screen. "Pull over, I'm walking the perimeter." Marcus's hands tightened on the wheel. "Sir, it's pouring. We could reschedule for—" "Stop the car." The Escalade lurched to a halt. Ezra unfolded himself from the back seat, all 6'5" of controlled violence wrapped in a charcoal Tom Ford suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He didn't bother with an umbrella. Let the rain punish him. He'd survived worse. His leather shoes hit the flooded sidewalk with a splash that sent dirty water spraying across his Italian wool pants. He didn't flinch. Pain was an old friend. Discomfort was white noise. He'd been numb for so long that weather was just another irrelevant detail in an irrelevant world. The street was dead. No pedestrians. No cars. Just the relentless drumming of rain against metal awnings and the distant groan of a rusted sign swinging in the wind. Ezra inhaled deeply, letting his wolf senses catalog the scents: motor oil, wet garbage, mold, desperation. And then something else. His wolf stirred for the first time in 5 years. Not a full awakening, just a flicker of interest, like someone tapping on glass from the other side of reality. Ezra frowned, shaking his head. Stress, exhaustion. He hadn't slept more than 3 hours a night since. He refused to finish that thought. He was passing a pathetic excuse for a bakery, Sunrise Breads, the faded sign read, when something collided with his leg. Hard. Ezra looked down. A child, maybe 6 years old, soaked to the bone. Her bright yellow rain slicker was ripped at the elbow, held together with duct tape. She'd tripped over her own untied shoelaces and face-planted directly into his knee. The smart move was to step around her. Keep walking. Let someone else deal with lost children and their careless parents. But then she looked up. Ezra's world tilted sideways. Her eyes, Christ, her eyes. One was the color of raw honey, glowing amber even in the gray light. The other was deep indigo blue, like the ocean at midnight. Heterochromia. A genetic rarity so uncommon that Ezra had only seen it once before in his 34 years of existence. On the woman he'd buried 5 years ago. On Selene. The little girl scrambled backward, her small hands slipping on the wet concrete. Sorry, mister. I didn't mean. I was chasing a cat and—" Ezra couldn't breathe. His chest felt like someone had reached inside and squeezed. The rain plastered his dark hair to his forehead, water running into his eyes, but he didn't blink. Couldn't blink. "Where's your mother?" The question came out harsher than intended, almost a growl. The girl flinched. Even human children could sense danger, and Ezra Frost radiated it like nuclear fallout. She's working, inside." The girl pointed a trembling finger at the bakery behind her. "I'm supposed to wait, but I saw the kitty and—" Show me your hands. What? Your hands. Let me see them. The girl slowly extended her small palms, confused and terrified. Ezra crouched down, ignoring the puddle soaking through his knees. He examined her hands with the intensity of a forensic scientist. No marks, no scars, nothing. What the hell was he doing? This was insane. Selene was dead. He'd stood at her funeral. He'd scattered her ashes himself at the cliff where they'd first met. He'd felt the mate bond snap like a frayed rope, the pain so intense it had dropped him to his knees in front of 300 witnesses. He started to stand, disgusted with himself. Grief was making him delusional. "You've got a moon," the little girl said suddenly. Ezra froze halfway up. "What?" She pointed at his right forearm. He'd rolled up his sleeves earlier to keep the cuffs dry. There, etched into his tanned skin, was a crescent-shaped scar, jagged, angry, permanent. It wasn't a tattoo. It was a brand. A remnant of the ancient bloodbinding ritual he'd performed with Selene 3 days before their official mating ceremony. When she died, the magical tether had cauterized itself, leaving this scar behind as a cruel reminder. "It's a scar, kid," Ezra said flatly, pulling his sleeve down. "Not a moon." "My mama has one too." The girl's voice was clear and confident now, her fear momentarily forgotten. She tapped her own chest, right over her heart. "Right here. She told me it's where her heart broke in half." The world stopped. Not metaphorically. Ezra felt time itself stumble. The rain hung suspended in the air for a heartbeat. The sound of distant traffic faded to nothing. Even his own pulse seemed to pause. Inside his mind, his wolf, the primal, ancient force that had been dormant since the funeral, erupted. It wasn't a gentle awakening. It was a volcanic explosion of raw power and desperate need. The beast slammed against his ribcage with enough force to crack bone, howling one word over and over. "Mate, mate, mate." "No," Ezra whispered. His hands were shaking. "No, that's not. She's dead. I buried her. The bloodbinding ritual was forbidden precisely because it was irreversible. When two wolves bound their souls together, they created a mystical link that transcended death itself. If one mate died, the other bore a scar. But if both lived, separated by distance or circumstance, each carried a mirror mark, his on the arm, hers over the heart. If this child's mother had the corresponding burn scar over her heart, it meant the impossible. Selene was alive. Ezra grabbed the little girl's shoulders, his grip too tight. She yelped in surprise. "What's your mother's name?" "You're hurting me." "Her name?" "Stella. Her name is Stella." "Stella, short for Selene." Ezra released the girl and stumbled backward, his expensive shoes splashing through another puddle. He stared at the bakery, at the pathetic, run-down building with its cracked windows and water-stained walls. "Marcus," his roar carried over the storm like thunder. The Escalade's door flew open. Marcus was at his side in seconds, hand already on the weapon holstered beneath his jacket. "Alpha, what's wrong?" "Rogues, ambush." Ezra couldn't form words. He pointed at the bakery with a trembling hand. Marcus followed his gaze, confused. "Sir, I don't." "Lock down the perimeter," Ezra commanded, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage and terrifying hope. "Nobody gets in or out of this town. I don't care if it's the goddamn president. If anyone tries to cross the border, you put them down. Understood?" "Alpha, what the hell is going on?" Ezra looked down at the little girl, who was now crying softly, clutching a raggedy stuffed rabbit to her chest. He did something he hadn't done in 5 years. He picked up a child. He scooped her into his arms, holding her with surprising gentleness despite his shaking hands. She smelled like wet pavement and cheap strawberry shampoo. But underneath that, buried deep, was the faint scent of his pack, the Northern Territory, the bloodline. "What's your name?" Ezra asked quietly. Emma. Emma, not a family name, not Seleni's choice. Someone had tried to erase their history. Ezra looked at Marcus, and his beta actually took a step back. The expression on the alpha's face was beyond fury. It was biblical wrath mixed with desperate, fragile hope. I think, Ezra said slowly, inhaling Emma's scent again, we just found the queen. The bell above the bakery door chimed, a cheerful, tinkling sound that felt obscene given what was about to happen. Ezra stepped inside, still carrying Emma. The warmth hit him immediately, along with the smell of burnt coffee and yeast. It was a far cry from the pristine, temperature-controlled kitchens back at his estate. The place was empty. No customers, just one employee visible behind the counter. A woman, her back was to the door. She was scrubbing the register with the kind of aggressive intensity that suggested she was trying to clean away her entire existence. She wore a faded yellow uniform dress that hung off her frame like a tent, and her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, covered by a hairnet that had seen better days. "We're closed early," she called out without turning around. Her voice was hoarse, worn down by exhaustion and cheap cigarettes. "Roof's leaking, come back tomorrow." Ezra felt his knees go weak. 5 years. 5 years of playing her voicemails just to hear her laugh. 5 years of waking up in the middle of the night, reaching for her. 5 years of ruling with an iron fist because feeling anything else would shatter him completely. And here she was, alive, scrubbing a register in a condemned bakery. "Emma, down," Ezra whispered, setting the girl on her feet. "Go sit at that table." Emma, sensing the shift in the air, the crackling electricity of two predators about to collide, scurried to a corner booth. Ezra took one step forward. His leather shoe creaked against the warped floorboards. "I said we're closed," the woman repeated, more irritation creeping into her tone. "I can give you yesterday's bread if—" She turned around. The cleaning rag fell from her hand. It hit the floor with a wet slap that echoed like a gunshot. Selene Thorne stood frozen behind the counter. She'd lost weight, too much weight. Her cheekbones were too sharp, her collarbones too prominent beneath the cheap fabric. Dark circles hung under her eyes like bruises. Her hands were red and raw from manual labor, the nails chipped and broken. But her eyes, God, those eyes, honey and indigo. The exact same impossible combination that had stopped him in his tracks the first time he'd seen her at a pack gathering 7 years ago. "No," Selene whispered. The color drained from her face until she looked like a corpse. She gripped the counter for support, her knuckles going white. "No, you can't, this isn't." "You're alive." Ezra's voice cracked on the second word. He took another step forward, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "I buried an empty coffin. They told me the rogues burned the car beyond recognition. They told me." "Stay back," Selene screamed. She grabbed a serrated bread knife from the cutting board, holding it out with both hands. They were shaking so badly the blade caught the fluorescent light in stuttering flashes. "Don't come any closer." Ezra stopped, stunned. "Selene, it's me. Look at me. I searched for you. I tore apart every rogue pack from here to the Canadian border. I know exactly who you are," Selene spat, tears now streaming down her face. "I know what you did, Ezra. Did you come to finish the job? Did Victoria send you? Isn't 5 years of exile enough for her?" Ezra's brain short-circuited. "Victoria? What the hell does my chief advisor have to do with?" "Don't lie to me." Selene's voice broke into a sob. The knife lowered slightly as her strength failed. "You rejected me. You signed the papers yourself. You said I wasn't strong enough to be Luna. You said I was a liability." The silence that followed was suffocating. "I never rejected you," Ezra said slowly, dangerously. His eyes had started to glow, not the warm amber of his wolf, but cold silver, like moonlight on a blade. I never signed anything. Who told you that? Victoria brought me the letter the morning of the accident. She said you'd found your true mate, someone from the European Pax. She said if I didn't disappear, if I didn't fake my death, you would have me executed for the embarrassment of breaking a royal engagement. A low growl started in Ezra's chest. It wasn't loud, but it vibrated through the building. The windows rattled. Dust fell from the ceiling. Victoria Ashford, daughter of his father's former second-in-command. She'd been campaigning for a political marriage between them since they were teenagers. When Ezra met Selene and chose her instead, Victoria had smiled and congratulated them publicly. Privately, she'd been plotting. I spent 5 years, Ezra said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper, hunting the people I thought killed you. I executed 16 rogue alphas. I razed 3 settlements to the ground. I became the monster everyone feared because I had nothing left to lose. Selene stared at him, searching his face for deception. She wanted to find it. It would be easier to hate him if he was lying. But all she saw was raw, bleeding anguish that mirrored her own. The girl, Ezra said, his gaze sliding to Emma, who was watching them with wide, terrified eyes. Emma. Selene immediately stepped in front of the sight line to her daughter, maternal instinct overriding everything else. She's mine. That's all you need to know. Is she mine? The question hung in the air like a blade. Selene's jaw clenched. She looked at Emma, at her mismatched eyes, at the way she tilted her head when confused, exactly like Ezra did, at the stubborn set of her little jaw. She has your temper, Selene admitted quietly, and she shifts in her sleep sometimes. Her wolf is already trying to surface. Ezra closed his eyes. A single tear escaped, cutting a track through the stubble on his jaw. He had a daughter. He had a mate. And for 5 years, they'd been living in poverty, hiding in a condemned bakery, while the woman who'd orchestrated it all sat at his right hand, managing his finances and pouring his wine. The door behind him burst open. Marcus stumbled in, rain-soaked and panicked. Alpha, we've got a problem. 5 black SUVs just pulled up around back. They're not locals. They have the royal seal. Ezra's eyes snapped open. The tears were gone, replaced by ice-cold fury. Victoria, he snarled. She put trackers on the vehicles. She knows I'm here. Selene gasped, dropping the knife. It clattered against the tile floor. She told me if I ever contacted you, if you ever found us, she'd kill Emma. Ezra, you have to leave. Please, just go. Ezra crossed the distance between them in 2 strides. Selene flinched, but he didn't grab her. He didn't force her. He simply reached out and cupped her face in his hands, hands that had killed, that had destroyed, that had been empty for 5 years. His thumb traced her cheekbone, wiping away a smudge of flour. I'm not going anywhere, he said, his voice dropping to that lethal whisper again. And neither are you. She'll kill us all, Selene whispered back, her voice breaking. Ezra looked down at her, at this woman who'd survived alone, who'd raised their daughter in secret, who'd been strong enough to endure what would have broken most people. Then let her try, Ezra said. He leaned down until his forehead touched hers. But I'm done losing you, Selene. I'm done being afraid, and I'm done playing nice with traitors. He turned to Marcus, his expression shifting into something arctic and terrible. Get the car. We're not inspecting the pack anymore. What are we doing, Alpha? Ezra looked at Selene, then at Emma. He turned back to the door, and a cruel, predatory smile curved his lips, the expression of a king who just declared war. We're burning it all down. The presidential suite of the Blackwood estate was a study in controlled opulence. Heated marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the snow-capped mountains, a bathroom bigger than most people's entire apartments. Selene knelt beside the massive soaking tub, washing 5 years of oak haven out of Emma's hair. The water was warm, actually warm, not lukewarm from a temperamental water heater that only worked on Tuesdays. Bubbles floated across the surface, scented with lavender and honey. Emma played with a rubber duck that probably cost more than Celine's monthly rent at the bakery. She kept glancing around the bathroom with wide eyes, like she expected it all to disappear. "Mama," Emma whispered, "is the scary man really my daddy?" Celine's hands stilled in her daughter's hair. The lump in her throat felt like broken glass. "Yes, baby, he is. He's the king." "Yes. Like in the stories, with the castle and the wolves." "Something like that." Emma was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, "He looks angry, but he smells like the forest after it rains. I like that smell." Selene closed her eyes, fighting back tears. Of course Emma would notice. Even at 6, her wolf senses were developing. She could smell the pine and ozone that clung to Ezra's skin, the scent of power and wild places. The bathroom door opened. Selene's entire body went rigid, her instincts screaming danger even though she knew, logically, that Ezra wouldn't hurt them. Knowing something and believing it were two different things. Ezra stood in the doorway. He'd showered in the guest suite, changed into clean clothes, black thermal shirt that hugged every muscle, dark jeans. He looked less like a politician now, more like a soldier preparing for battle. "The council is assembled," he said quietly, his eyes finding Selene's in the mirror. "Victoria's father, Lord Ashford, is demanding an audience. He's saying your arrest violates the treaty of noble families." Selene stood, drying her hands on a towel that was softer than anything she'd owned in 5 years. "Ashford is Victoria's attack dog. Of course he's angry." "He's more than angry, he's desperate." Ezra stepped into the room, and Emma immediately ducked lower in the tub, only her eyes visible above the bubbles. "With Victoria in a cell and you back, his family's influence is gone. He's going to strike tonight." "I'm not afraid of him," Selene lied. She was terrified. "You don't have to be." Ezra crossed to her, invading her personal space the way he always had, not aggressive, just magnetically present. "But I need you ready. The council will question you. They'll question her." His gaze flicked to Emma. "They'll try to delegitimize her claim." "Let them say whatever they want about me. But if they touch one hair on Emma's head—" "They will," Ezra interrupted. "They'll call her illegitimate. They'll demand proof. They'll try to invalidate her birthright to protect their own power." He reached behind his back and pulled out a small object. A silver dagger, no longer than his palm, with runes etched into the handle. "Hide this," he said, pressing it into Selene's hand. The metal was cold against her skin. "In your boot. If things go wrong, if I get separated from you, aim for the throat." Selene's fingers closed around the blade. "What are you planning?" "I'm planning," Ezra said, his voice dropping to that dangerous whisper she remembered from their early days together, "to end this tonight." The great hall was a cathedral of stone and stained glass. A massive oak table dominated the center, surrounded by 12 high-backed chairs, one for each member of the High Council. Tapestries depicting historic battles hung from the walls. Candles flickered in iron sconces, casting dancing shadows. When the double doors opened, every head turned. Ezra entered first, his aura flaring so powerfully that several of the weaker council members actually flinched. He wore full formal regalia now, black suit with silver threading, the royal crest emblazoned on his chest. He looked every inch the Wolf King. Selene followed a step behind, dressed in a midnight blue gown that one of the staff had pulled from the archives. It fit perfectly, which shouldn't have surprised her. Ezra had always been meticulous about details. She felt like an imposter in the silk and jewelry, like a child playing dress-up in her mother's closet. Emma held her hand, wearing a matching blue dress. She clutched her tattered stuffed rabbit, the only toy she'd insisted on bringing from their old apartment. Lord Ashford sat at the opposite end of the table from Ezra's empty chair. He was in his 60s, silver-haired and sharp-featured. He didn't look like a grieving father worried about his imprisoned daughter. He looked like a viper coiled to strike. "Alpha Ezra," Ashford said, not bothering to stand. "You've returned, and you've thrown my daughter into a cell without trial, without evidence, without due process. This is tyranny." "Your daughter," Ezra said calmly, pulling out the chair at the head of the table, "committed high treason. She faked the death of the Queen. She exiled my mate. She threatened the life of the heir to the Northern Territory." He pulled out the chair next to his for Selene. She sat, her spine rigid, her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. "The Queen," Ashford's laugh was sharp and ugly. "I see a bakery worker you rejected 5 years ago, and I see a child of questionable parentage." A murmur rippled through the council. This was the attack Ezra had predicted, question Emma's legitimacy, and the whole house of cards collapsed. "Careful, Ashford," Ezra growled. "The bloodbinding mark is proof enough." "Is it?" Ashford stood, smoothing his expensive suit. "Marks can be faked. Magic can be manipulated. You disappeared into a rogue-infested town and returned hours later with a woman and child, claiming their royalty. For all we know, this is an elaborate scheme to destabilize the bloodline." Selene felt rage replace fear. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against stone. "I am Selene Frost," she said, her voice shaking but growing stronger with each word. "I carried the heir to this territory alone, in poverty, while your daughter spent the treasury on parties and political bribes. I don't need to prove anything to you." "Actually," Ashford said with a cold smile, "you do. By pack law, any heir not born within recognized territory must undergo the sanguis veritas." The room erupted. Gasps, whispered arguments. Even the most loyal council members looked uncomfortable. The sanguis veritas, the blood truth. An ancient, brutal ritual that used blood magic to determine paternity. It was dangerous. For weak children, it could be fatal. "Absolutely not," Ezra snarled, slamming his fist on the table. The wood actually cracked. "She's 6 years old. I will not subject her to blood magic." "Then you admit doubt," Ashford said smoothly. "If you refuse the test, the child is illegitimate. And if the child is illegitimate, Selene is merely a mistress. Victoria remains the only suitable candidate for Luna." It was a perfect trap. Refuse and they lost the political war. Agree and Emma could be hurt or worse. Ezra looked ready to rip Ashford's throat out right there. His claws were extending, puncturing the wood beneath his palms. "I'll do it." The small voice came from beside Selene. Emma had climbed onto her chair. She looked tiny against the massive furniture, but her chin was lifted in a way that was pure Ezra, stubborn, fearless, defiant. "Emma, no," Selene whispered, grabbing her daughter's arm. "I'm not scared," Emma said. She looked directly at Ashford, and her mismatched eyes glowed faintly in the candlelight. "I'm a wolf, too." Ashford's smile faltered, just for a second. Ezra looked at his daughter, this brave, impossible child, and felt something in his chest break and heal at the same time. He nodded slowly to Elder Martha, a blind woman who sat at the far end of the table. She was the pack's spiritual leader, the keeper of the old ways. "Prepare the ritual," Ezra commanded, his voice tight. "But if she bleeds more than 3 drops, Ashford, I will drain every ounce of yours." The silver chalice sat in the center of the table like an accusation. It was ancient, engraved with runes that predated written language. Elder Martha ran her gnarled fingers over its rim, her milky white eyes seeing more than anyone else in the room. "The sanguis veritas does not lie," Martha intoned, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "It calls upon the moon goddess herself. The false will burn, the true will shine." She placed a ceremonial knife beside the chalice, Obsidian blade, handle wrapped in leather. It looked sharp enough to split atoms. "Are you prepared, Alpha?" Ezra picked up the knife. His hand was steady. "I have nothing to hide, but if this harms my daughter, Ashford, there won't be a trial. There won't be a vote. There will only be your corpse." Lord Ashford leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Proceed, Your Majesty. Let's see if the mongrel's blood runs true." Ezra turned to Selene. Her face was pale, but her eyes were fierce. She gave him a single nod. He sliced his palm without hesitation, deep enough to matter. Blood welled up immediately, dark, almost black in the candlelight, thick with alpha power. He made a fist over the chalice. Drip. 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 The blood hit the silver bottom with a hiss, like water on a hot skillet. The scent of alpha blood, wild, dangerous, intoxicating, flooded the room. "Now the child," Martha whispered. Ezra knelt beside Emma's chair. She looked so small, so fragile. "Hey, little wolf," he said softly, using a nickname he hadn't known existed until this moment. "Just a pinch, I promise." Emma was braver than soldiers he'd known. She stared Ashford down as Ezra pricked her tiny index finger. A single drop of blood welled up, bright red, almost luminous. Ezra guided her hand over the chalice. The drop fell. Time stopped. Every eye locked onto the silver bowl. Ashford leaned forward, a cruel smile already forming, preparing the speech that would condemn them all. The drop hit Ezra's blood. For one terrible second, nothing happened. Then the chalice began to sing. Not figuratively. An actual sound, pure, clear, resonant like a crystal bell, struck perfectly. The blood inside didn't mix. It swirled, faster and faster, forming a vortex. And then it ignited. A column of liquid gold light exploded from the chalice, shooting toward the vaulted ceiling. It was so bright that council members threw their arms up to shield their eyes. The shockwave knocked candles over. Stained glass windows rattled in their frames. The light wasn't just bright. It was power. Raw, undiluted, ancient power that made the hair on everyone's arms stand up. Gold. Elder Martha collapsed to her knees, tears streaming from her blind eyes. "Sunlight gold," she gasped. "The mark of pure royal blood. She is not just an heir. She carries the blood of the first kings." Marcus, standing by the door, let out a whoop and punched the air. "Long live Princess Emma." The chant started quietly, then built like a wave. "Long live the princess. Long live the princess. Long live the princess." Even the council members, who'd been skeptical, were on their feet, bowing. Ezra wrapped a cloth around Emma's finger, his hands shaking with relief. He looked at Selene, and for the first time in 5 years, something like hope flickered in his eyes. They'd won. He turned to Ashford. The old man wasn't cowering. He wasn't begging. He was staring at the golden light with pure, unadulterated hatred. "The test is concluded," Ezra announced, his voice ringing with authority. "Lord Ashford, for the crimes of conspiracy, treason, and attempted regicide, you are stripped of your title. Guards, arrest him." 2 royal guards, men Ezra had known for a decade, stepped toward Ashford. And then Ashford laughed. It was a dry, wheezing sound that made Selene's skin crawl. "You arrogant child," Ashford chuckled, shaking his head. "Did you really think I'd stake everything on a drop of blood? I don't care about your laws, I care about power." He snapped his fingers. Betrayal was instant. The 2 guards didn't grab Ashford. They spun around, drew shock batons, and slammed them into the necks of the loyalist council members beside them. "Treason!" Marcus roared, drawing his weapon. Crash. The stained glass windows exploded inward. Ropes unfurled from the ceiling. A dozen armed mercenaries in tactical gear and gas masks repelled into the hall like something out of an action movie. "Kill them all," Ashford shrieked, his composure shattering. "Leave no witnesses." Chaos erupted. "DOWN," Ezra roared. He grabbed the massive oak table. It had to weigh 500 pounds, and flipped it onto its side with a display of strength that cracked the stone floor. It crashed down, creating a barricade. Bullets started flying. The sound was deafening. "Selene, take Emma to the servants' passage," Ezra shouted over the gunfire. He grabbed an iron candelabra and hurled it like a spear, impaling a mercenary who'd been rushing their position. "Geo!" "I'm not leaving you," Selene screamed back. Plaster dust rained down from the ceiling. "You have to." Ezra grabbed her shoulders, his eyes wild. "They want the air, get her out." He turned and charged into the fray. He was a blur of violence, breaking arms, crushing windpipes, moving with the deadly efficiency of a predator born for this. But for every man he dropped, 2 more rappelled down from the ceiling. Ashford had brought a private army. Selene grabbed Emma's hand. "Run, baby, run." They bolted toward a small wooden door hidden in an alcove, but a massive shape stepped out of the shadows, blocking their path. Ashford's personal bodyguard, a brute named Garrett. He was 7 feet of muscle and scar tissue, more bare than wolf. Garrett backhanded Selene. The impact sent her sprawling across the floor, her vision exploding into stars. "Mama," Emma screamed. Garrett reached for the child, with hands the size of dinner plates. Selene's survival instincts kicked in. She reached into her boot. The silver dagger Ezra had given her was cold against her palm. As Garrett's fingers closed around Emma's arm, Selene drove the blade upward with every ounce of strength she possessed. It sank into Garrett's kidney. He roared, stumbling back, his grip loosening. "Ezra!" Selene screamed. Ezra heard her. He turned, saw his mate on the ground, his daughter cornered. Something inside the Wolf King shattered. He threw his head back and let out a roar that wasn't human. It was the sound of tectonic plates shifting, of mountains crumbling, of gods dying. His body convulsed. Bones snapped and reformed with sickening cracks. His expensive suit shredded, falling away in ribbons. Black fur exploded from his skin. Muscles expanded, doubled, tripled in size. His face elongated into a muzzle filled with teeth designed to tear through steel. In 3 seconds, the man was gone. In his place stood the Black Wolf, a creature from nightmares, standing 8 feet at the shoulder, eyes burning like red coals. The mercenaries stopped shooting. They'd been paid to fight a king. This was a demon. The Black Wolf didn't fight. He annihilated. He moved faster than physics should allow, a shadow of death. He caught Garrett mid-swing, his jaws clamping around the bodyguard's torso. One savage shake, and Garrett's spine shattered. The body flew across the room, hitting the stone wall with a wet crunch. Ashford, standing near the overturned table, realized his coup had failed. His army was being slaughtered. He looked around wildly, eyes landing on Emma, who stood frozen by the door. "If I can't have the throne," Ashford snarled, pulling a massive silver-plated revolver from his coat, "no one will." He aimed directly at the little girl. Selene saw the barrel level out, saw Ashford's finger tighten on the trigger, calculated the distance. Ezra was too far away, surrounded by 3 mercenaries. She didn't think, didn't hesitate. A mother's instinct is faster than any wolf. "Emma, DOWN." Selene threw herself across the open space, her body a shield between the bullet and her daughter. Bang! The gunshot was different from the others, heavier, louder. The silver bullet hit Selene in the shoulder, spinning her in the air. Blood misted. She crashed down near the table, sliding across stone. Mama! Emma's voice was small, terrified. The black wolf froze. He turned his massive head. He saw his mate crumpled on the floor, smelled her blood, and beneath the copper scent, the acrid burn of silver nitrate. Ezra's wolf looked at Ashford. Ashford tried to fire again. The gun clicked, jammed. The black wolf didn't growl, didn't roar. He made a sound worse than any of that, a low, vibrating purr of pure destruction. He closed the distance in a heartbeat. Ashford didn't even have time to scream before massive jaws clamped around him. One violent shake, and Lord Ashford ceased to exist as anything recognizable. The remaining mercenaries dropped their weapons, falling to their knees. But the Alpha wasn't looking at them. Ezra shifted back. The transformation was agonizing, but he ignored it. He was naked, covered in blood, most of it not his, and trembling. He crawled across the stone floor to Selene. Selene, look at me. He gathered her into his arms. The wound was in her shoulder, close to the heart. The silver bullet was lodged deep. Already the poison was working, black veins spreading from the wound like cracks in porcelain. Her skin was turning gray. Ezra, she choked, blood bubbling past her lips. Is she safe? She's safe. You saved her. Ezra pressed his hands over the wound, but the silver burned his skin. You're okay. You're going to be okay. That's an order. Cold, Selene whispered. Her mismatched eyes were fading, the brilliant colors dulling to ash. So cold. Take care of our little wolf. Her chest gave one last shuddering rise. And then stopped. No, Ezra screamed, shaking her. Don't you dare, Selene. Mama! Emma crept forward, her small hands reaching out to touch her mother's face. Ezra threw his head back and howled, a sound of such raw agony that it cracked the foundation of the building. It echoed across the mountains, a wolf's grief made manifest. The queen had fallen. And the king was broken. The royal medical wing smelled like sterile death, antiseptic and despair mixed with the metallic tang of blood. Ezra paced the hallway like a caged predator, his bare feet leaving bloody footprints on the white tile. Someone had thrown a robe over his shoulders, but he didn't remember who. His hands were still shaking, still covered in her blood. Dr. Navarro, the head physician, emerged from the trauma room. His surgical mask was pulled down, his expression carefully neutral in that way doctors practiced when delivering bad news. Ezra was on him instantly, grabbing the man's shoulders hard enough to bruise. Tell me she's awake. Tell me you got the silver out. Navarro didn't flinch. He'd known Ezra since the Alpha was a child. We extracted the bullet, Your Majesty, but the silver nitrate coating had already entered her bloodstream. It's a military-grade poison specifically designed to kill high-ranking wolves. I don't want medical terminology, Ezra snarled, his voice breaking. Fix her. We've done everything medicine can do. Navarro's voice was gentle but firm. Her organs are shutting down. Her healing factor isn't fighting the poison, it's accelerating the spread. You need to say goodbye, Ezra. She has maybe 30 minutes. Ezra released the doctor, stumbling backward like he'd been shot himself. No. He shoved past Navarro and burst into the trauma room. Selene lay on the hospital bed, connected to a dozen machines that beeped in an increasingly sluggish rhythm. She looked like a ghost. Her skin had gone translucent gray, the black veins of silver poisoning crawling up her neck, across her jaw, spreading toward her brain like invasive roots. Marcus stood in the corner, holding a sleeping Emma. His eyes were red-rimmed. Everyone out, Ezra whispered. Ezra, you can't, Marcus started. Get out. The command was so absolute, so drenched in alpha authority, that Marcus actually staggered. He adjusted his grip on Emma and hurried out, the door clicking shut behind him. Ezra was alone with the sound of dying. He walked to the bed on numb legs, took Seleni's hand. It was ice cold, like holding a corpse. "You promised," he choked out, pressing her hand to his forehead. "You said you'd never leave me again." The heart monitor beeped. Slow. Too slow. Ezra looked at the bloodbinding mark over her heart, the crescent moon scar that matched his own. It was dull now, the skin around it blackened by poison. This mark was their soul connection, the mystical tether that bound them across distance and death. If she died, he would become a shell, a feral monster with no anchor to humanity. "I won't accept this," Ezra said aloud. He remembered the old stories, the forbidden rituals his grandmother had whispered about when he was young, tales the council had banned for being too dangerous. When the moon is dark and the soul is tethered still, only life for life can bridge death's hill. He wasn't going to watch her die. He was going to drag her back from whatever void was claiming her. Ezra climbed onto the narrow hospital bed, his large frame barely fitting. He positioned himself over her, chest to chest, heart to heart. "I, Ezra Frost, Alpha King of the Northern Territories." He spoke into the sterile air, his voice resonating with power. "Invoke the dead of souls." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. The lights flickered. "I offer my strength for her weakness. I offer my blood for her poison. I offer my life for hers." He closed his eyes, reaching deep inside himself for his wolf. Not to shift, but to access the raw energy that made him alpha, the burning core of power that let him command, dominate, rule. He visualized that golden fire and pushed it outward. Into her. "Take it," he commanded silently. "Take everything." Nothing happened. The monitor beeped again. Beep. Beep. "Got him it, Selene," Ezra's voice broke. "Fight! Think of Emma, she needs you. I need you, don't you dare give up." The door creaked open. "I said get," Ezra started to roar. "She's calling me." It was Emma's small voice. Ezra froze, turned his head. Emma stood in the doorway. She'd slipped away from Marcus. She wasn't looking at Ezra. She was staring at her mother with eyes that glowed. Not just amber and indigo, but swirling with silver light. "Emma, you shouldn't see this," Ezra said, his voice thick. "Go back to—" "She's floating away," Emma said calmly, too calmly for a 6-year-old. "Her soul, it's up there." She pointed at the ceiling. "It's heavy, I can't pull it back alone." Ezra stared at his daughter, the blood test, the golden light. She wasn't just an alpha heir. She was something the moon goddess had sent for this exact moment. "What do I need to do?" Ezra asked. Emma climbed onto the bed. She placed her small hand directly over the blackened moon mark on Selene's chest. "You pull from down here," Emma said, covering her mother's heart. "I'll pull from up there, we meet in the middle." Ezra placed his hand over Emma's. Their combined grip covered the scar completely. "Together," Emma whispered. Ezra closed his eyes. This time, he didn't just push energy. He reached. Into the void. Into the space between life and death, where souls lingered before crossing over. He felt it, a thread, thin and fraying, drifting away into darkness. He grabbed it with everything he had. "Come back to me." Pain exploded through his body. The silver poison in Selene's blood sensed the intrusion and attacked him through the connection, trying to infect him too. It felt like being burned alive from the inside. Ezra's back arched. He groaned through clenched teeth. "Don't let go, Daddy," Emma cried. Ezra wouldn't, couldn't. He held onto that thread and pulled, pouring his life force into the bond, burning away the black veins with sheer willpower. "Selene," he screamed in his mind, "wake up." The moon mark beneath their hands suddenly erupted with light. Not gold this time. Pure white, blinding. The machines went haywire. Alarms shrieked. The heart monitor flatlined. Beep. Ezra stopped breathing. Then, beep, 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 beep. Rhythm returned, faster, stronger. Seleni's back arched off the bed, her mouth opening in a silent scream as air rushed into her lungs. Her eyes flew open, glowing like neon signs, honey and indigo burning with supernatural light. The gray faded from her skin. The black veins dissolved like smoke. Color returned to her cheeks. Ezra collapsed beside her, gasping, his entire body shaking with exhaustion. He'd just given away half his life force. Worth it. So worth it. Selene blinked rapidly, disoriented. She turned her head, saw Ezra, saw Emma. Ezra, her voice was raspy but alive. What happened? Ezra let out a broken, wet laugh. He pulled both of them into his arms, crushing them against his chest. You died, he whispered into Selene's hair. You died and we brought you back. Don't ever do that again. Don't ever. His voice broke completely. Selene's arms came up slowly, wrapping around him and Emma. She breathed in his scent, pine and rain and desperate relief. I'm here, she whispered. I'm here, we're all here. The door burst open. Dr. Navarro and 3 nurses rushed in, alerted by the alarms. They stopped dead. The woman who'd been clinically dead 3 minutes ago was sitting up, holding her family, very much alive. Navarro stared. That's medically impossible. Ezra looked up, his face wet with tears he didn't bother hiding. Then I guess, he said hoarsely, you need better textbooks. The gardens of the Frost estate had never been Ezra's priority. Under Victoria's management, they'd been pristine, sterile, more for show than soul. Roses in perfect rows. Hedges trimmed within an inch of their lives. Now, 3 months later, they were wild. Selene had taken over the grounds, planting whatever she wanted. Wildflowers exploded in chaotic color. The hedges grew freely. There were vegetable patches where ornamental fountains used to be. A garden party was underway, not the stuffy political affairs Victoria used to host, but a real celebration. Pack members from all territories mingled. Children chased each other through the flower beds. The scent of grilled meat and fresh bread filled the air. Ezra stood on the stone balcony overlooking the chaos, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked different. The hard edges had softened. He smiled more, laughed occasionally. He was learning how to be alive again. Plotting someone's murder, Selene's voice came from behind him. Ezra smiled without turning. Depends, are you volunteering? Selene stepped up beside him, leaning against the railing. She wore a dress the color of summer leaves, and on her head sat a simple silver circlet, the Luna's crown, redesigned to be elegant without being ostentatious. She looked radiant. Marcus bet me $20 you'd brood through the entire party, Selene teased. Tell Marcus he owes you money. Ezra set down his glass and wrapped an arm around her waist. I only brood on Tuesdays now. Below them, Emma was engaged in an epic sword fight with Marcus's son, using sticks as weapons. She was laughing, her mismatched eyes bright with joy. Safe, happy, loved. Have you heard from the southern prisons? Selene asked, her tone shifting slightly. The warden sent his monthly report. Ezra's grip on her waist tightened. Victoria is struggling. Manual labor doesn't agree with her. She's aged considerably. Selene looked out at the mountains. Do you think we were too harsh? She tried to have you killed, Selene. She threatened our daughter. She orchestrated 5 years of suffering. Ezra's voice hardened briefly. Death would have been mercy. Living with the knowledge that she destroyed herself, that's justice. Selene nodded. She didn't feel pity, couldn't afford to. Besides, Ezra continued, his hand sliding from her waist to rest gently on her stomach. "We have better things to focus on than Victoria Ashford." Selene smiled, covering his hand with hers. At 4 months pregnant, she wasn't showing much yet, but they both knew. "Do you think Emma's ready to be a big sister?" Selene asked. "She asked me for a puppy last week. I think a baby brother will suffice." "Brother, you're that confident." Ezra turned her to face him, his silver eyes warm. "I can feel him, Selene. He has your stubbornness. Kept you up all night with kicking." "Our son, the soccer player," Selene laughed. Ezra's expression grew serious. He cupped her face in both hands. "I love you," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I loved you when they told me you were dead. I loved you when I found you in that bakery. I loved you when you died in my arms. And I will love you until the stars burn out and the moon falls from the sky." Selene stood on her tiptoes, kissing him softly. "And I love you, my king, my mate, my infuriating, overprotective, occasionally homicidal alpha." "Occasionally," Ezra raised an eyebrow. "Frequently," Selene amended. Below them, the pack erupted in cheers. Someone had spotted them on the balcony. The chant started small, then grew. "Long live the king, long live the queen." Ezra pulled Selene closer, resting his forehead against hers. "We did it," he whispered. "We survived." "We did more than survive," Selene whispered back. "We won." The sun set over the northern territory, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold. The darkness that had gripped these lands for 5 years had finally lifted. Winter was over. And spring, wild, chaotic, beautiful spring, had come to stay. Epilogue. 1 year later. Emma sat cross-legged on the nursery floor, her 7-year-old face scrunched in concentration. In front of her, her baby brother, 6-month-old Alexander, was attempting to crawl. He wasn't very good at it yet. Mostly he just rocked back and forth, making frustrated baby noises. "Come on, Alex," Emma encouraged. "You can do it, just move your knees." Alexander looked at his sister with eyes that were already showing signs of heterochromia, one starting to lighten to amber, the other deepening to indigo. He rocked harder. And then, impossibly, he shifted. Not fully. He was too young for that. But his tiny hands sprouted claws for just a second, giving him traction on the carpet. He lunged forward, crawling 3 whole feet before collapsing in a giggling heap. "Mama, Daddy," Emma shrieked. Alex shifted, his wolf came out. Selene and Ezra came running from the master bedroom, both in various states of panic. They skidded to a stop in the nursery doorway. Alexander sat on the carpet, normal baby hands again, grinning a gummy smile and clapping. Ezra stared at his son. "He's 6 months old. That's not supposed to be possible until at least age 5. Selene picked up Alexander, checking him over. "Are you okay, baby boy? Does anything hurt?" Alexander just giggled and grabbed a fistful of her hair. Emma beamed with pride. "I told you he was special. I told you." Ezra and Selene exchanged a look over their children's heads, a look that said we're going to have our hands full, and we wouldn't have it any other way. "Come on," Ezra said, scooping Emma up in one arm while Selene held Alexander. "Let's get you 2 troublemakers some dinner before you accidentally burn the house down." "I didn't burn anything," Emma protested. "That was one time." As they walked downstairs, a family whole and unbroken, the moon rose over the mountains. And somewhere in the southern prison mines, Victoria Ashford looked up at that same moon and wept. Justice, after all, had very sharp teeth. The end. And there you have it, the incredible journey of how a chance encounter in the rain reunited 2 souls that fate tried to tear apart. From the flooded streets of Riverside Point to the marble halls of the Frost estate, Ezra and Selene proved that true love, real mate bonds, can survive betrayal, death, and even time itself. Victoria and Lord Ashford learned the hardest way possible. Never threaten an alpha's family. The consequences are absolute. What did you think of Emma's powers? Do you believe Alexander will grow up to be even stronger than his father? And was Victoria's punishment fitting, or should it have been harsher? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and love hearing your theories. If this story grabbed you by the heartstrings and didn't let go, smash that like button. It genuinely helps the channel grow, so I can bring you more epic paranormal romances. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next story. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for listening, and remember, the best love stories are the ones worth fighting for. Until next time, stay wild. Wolf Crescent.